Captain Nathan Hale stood at his post inside the Crystal Palace of the Lunareth Dominion, his uniform spotless and his stance firm. The alien palace glittered like a city of glass, but Nathan's eyes didn't wander. His job was to protect the royal family, especially Princess Eris Valrin. For 2 years, Nathan had been part of the Earth delegation assigned to serve the Dominion after the long war between their races ended. Peace had come, but not trust. The Lunareths were proud, tall, and elegant beings with silver skin and voices that echoed softly. They saw humans as emotional and reckless, yet useful for dangerous work. Nathan knew the whispers. Some called him the pet guard. Others said the princess only kept him near to show she was open-minded. None of it mattered. He had sworn to protect her. Every morning, Eris entered the hall like a beam of light, graceful, distant, perfect. Nathan would bow slightly and take his position beside her throne. He never spoke unless spoken to, but when he did, his calm, human tone always caught her attention. One day, during a meeting of the Imperial Council, Eris sat among old ministers who discussed trade routes and political control over nearby star systems. Nathan stood quietly near a tall window, scanning for threats. Then, the window exploded. A bright blue flash filled the room. Nathan didn't think. He moved before anyone else could react. In less than a second, he tackled the princess to the floor as a plasma bolt sizzled above their heads and struck the throne. Another shot tore through the air, burning his arm, but he didn't stop. The palace guards finally returned fire, and the attackers fled through the shattered window. Silence followed, thick and heavy. Nathan slowly stood, his uniform scorched, his arm bleeding. Eris looked up at him with wide, trembling eyes. No one in her life had ever dared touch her. But this human had thrown himself into fire to save her. "Are you hurt, Your Highness?" Nathan asked, his voice calm. She shook her head. "You're injured." "It's nothing," he said, his tone steady. "Protecting life is what we do." Those words stayed in her mind long after the medics led him away. Days passed. The attack was blamed on a rebel faction, but something inside Eris changed. She visited the medic wing under the excuse of checking on security. Nathan sat there with his arm bandaged, reading a digital logbook. When she entered, he stood immediately. "You don't have to stand," she said softly. "You saved me." "Still my duty, Princess," he replied. Eris hesitated, studying him. "You risked your life without hesitation. Why?" Nathan met her eyes. "Because you were in danger. That's all the reason I needed. No flowery words, no demands, no pride. Just truth." After that day, she began to see humans differently. She asked Nathan to accompany her on inspections, on diplomatic trips, even in small walks through the palace gardens. His presence gave her calm. He was simple, direct, but never disrespectful. The nobles noticed. Whispered gossip spread like wildfire. "The princess favors the human. She spends too much time with him. Has she forgotten her bloodline?" Eris ignored them. When she stood beside Nathan, she felt free, something she had never felt among her own kind. One evening, during a storm over the capital, lightning flashed across the palace towers. Eris and Nathan stood on a balcony overlooking the city lights. She asked him quietly, "What is Earth really like?" Nathan smiled faintly. "Loud, messy, alive. We argue a lot, make mistakes, and sometimes start wars. But we always try again. We build. We care." She looked at him, thoughtful. "We were taught that humans act without logic." He nodded. "Sometimes we do. But sometimes heart matters more than logic." Eris turned away, feeling something unfamiliar stir within her. Weeks later, a grand meeting of the Dominion's Council gathered to discuss renewed cooperation with humanity. The old nobles were proud, strict, and deeply traditional. As Eris entered the chamber with Nathan standing behind her, the hall filled with tension. Councillor Thalen, one of the eldest, rose and spoke coldly. "Princess, these humans bring chaos wherever they go. Their emotions blind them. They are not fit to walk among us." Nathan said nothing. He kept his hands behind his back, gaze forward. But Eris's voice cut through the hall. "And yet, when danger came, it was a human who saved your future empress, while our own guards froze." Murmurs rippled through the room. Thalon frowned. He acted by instinct, not honor. Eris stood tall. Instinct saved lives when logic failed. The counselors exchanged uneasy glances. The Empress herself watched silently, curious but cautious. Then Eris's voice softened, yet carried across the marble hall. "Perhaps what our empire needs is not more cold reasoning, but a heart like theirs. Perhaps courage and kindness are not weaknesses." She turned toward Nathan. He froze under her gaze, unsure what she was about to do. Then she spoke the words that would shake the galaxy. "I wish you were my husband, human." The hall fell silent. Every sound died at once. Ministers stared, speechless. Guards tightened their grips on their weapons. Even the Empress's silver eyes widened in disbelief. Nathan felt his breath catch. His heart pounded loud enough to drown the silence. Eris didn't look away. "You have more honor than any noble here," she said softly, but clearly. "You protected me, not because of duty or gain, but because it was right. And I will not be ashamed to say that I respect that, and I respect you." Thalon slammed his hand on the table. "This is treason. A royal cannot speak of such things." The Empress finally rose, her expression unreadable. "Eris." The princess bowed her head slightly but didn't take her words back. "Mother, I only speak the truth." The Empress's tone was icy. "Truth can destroy empires." "Then perhaps our empire needs to be remade," Eris answered quietly. Guards stepped forward, but the Empress raised her hand. "Enough." Her eyes fell on Nathan. "Leave us." Nathan bowed and left the chamber, his heart heavy and confused. As the great doors closed behind him, the silence inside broke into chaos. Angry voices, fear, disbelief. Outside, he stood in the long corridor alone. Through the crystal walls, the city lights shimmered. He could still hear her words echo in his mind. "I wish you were my husband, human." He knew what that meant in alien law. Such words could start political disaster, maybe even war. Yet, beneath all the danger, a part of him felt something warm, something real. For years he had fought for survival, for orders, for nations. But for the first time, someone saw him not as a soldier, not as a human curiosity, but as a person. That night, the entire palace buzzed with shock. Ministers held secret meetings. Some demanded Eris be stripped of her title. Others feared the Empress's next move. Yet through all the fear and anger, something new began to stir, a story that the people whispered in hidden corners. They spoke of a princess who defied her own empire. They spoke of a human who risked everything to protect her, and together they had challenged the universe's oldest walls. In the quiet of his quarters, Nathan sat by the window, looking at the alien stars. He didn't know what tomorrow would bring, punishment, exile, or worse. But deep inside, he knew one thing for certain. The words she had spoken had already changed everything. And somewhere in the palace, Princess Eris Valrin sat alone in her chamber, gazing at the same stars, whispering softly to herself, "I meant every word." The next morning the sun rose over the shining towers of the Lunareth capital, but the palace was not at peace. What had happened the night before had shaken the entire empire. Every news channel, every noble house, and every soldier was talking about one thing, the princess's words. "I wish you were my husband, human." The council called it a scandal. Some wanted the human guard punished. Others demanded Eris be kept under watch until she apologized. The Empress herself stayed silent, her thoughts hidden. Nathan Hale was confined to his quarters under security review. The guards treated him politely, but everyone knew what it meant. They were trying to keep him away from the princess. Nathan didn't protest. He had lived through war and chaos. This silence was harder. He sat by the window of his small room. watching the alien sky shift colors. He thought about Earth, about blue oceans and green fields that he might never see again. He knew Eris had risked everything by speaking those words. In her world, a royal could not choose her partner freely, let alone a human. But he couldn't help remembering her eyes when she said it, calm, certain, unafraid. Days passed. The palace buzzed with secret meetings. Some nobles wanted to remove the human delegation. Others warned that any move against Nathan might break the fragile peace with Earth. Then one night, Nathan heard a soft knock on his door. He opened it and froze. It was Eris, wrapped in a dark cloak, her silver eyes shining in the dim light. "Your Highness, you shouldn't be here," he whispered. "I had to see you," she said quietly. "They're trying to force me to take back my words." Nathan frowned. "You should. It will save you trouble." The Empress, Eris, stepped closer. "No, I won't take them back. You showed me what courage means. You protect others without thinking of yourself. If that's not strength, then what is?" Nathan looked away. "Courage doesn't matter if it starts a war," she smiled sadly. "Then maybe the galaxy needs a war of hearts instead of guns." Before he could answer, distant alarms blared through the palace. Both of them turned toward the sound, emergency sirens echoing through the halls. The palace security lights turned red. Eris gasped. "They're here." "Who?" Nathan demanded. "The noble extremists," she said. "They think they can restore honor by removing me." Nathan's instincts took over. "Stay behind me." He stepped into the hall unarmed except for his guard baton. Shadows moved between the tall crystal columns. Alien figures in dark armor rushed forward. Plasma bolts hissed through the air. Nathan pushed Eris behind a pillar. "Stay down," he shouted and charged toward the attackers. The first blow knocked him back, but he used the momentum to strike one attacker's weapon hand. The plasma gun flew aside. Another lunged forward. Nathan ducked and slammed his baton into the alien's leg joint, sending sparks across the marble floor. He had no armor, no backup, but he fought with the determination of a man who refused to fail again. More rebels appeared at the end of the corridor. Nathan knew he couldn't win. He grabbed Eris's hand and ran toward the Hall of Stars. The grandest room in the palace, a massive chamber lined with crystal walls showing the galaxy beyond. They reached the center of the hall just as the attackers caught up. "Stand down," Nathan shouted, holding the baton high. "She's the rightful heir," one alien sneered. "No heir who shames her people deserves the crown." A plasma bolt fired. Nathan turned, pushing Eris behind him. The blast struck his side. He gritted his teeth and stood firm, refusing to fall. He charged again, striking with desperate strength, his every movement powered by the single thought, "Keep her safe." He managed to disable one, then another, but there were too many. Eris cried out, "Stop." "You'll kill him!" They ignored her. Another bolt hit Nathan's shoulder. He fell to one knee but still raised his weapon. "You'll have to go through me," he said, his voice rough but steady. The rebels advanced. Then suddenly the great doors of the hall burst open. Palace guards stormed in, led by the Empress herself. "Enough!" she thundered, her voice echoing like thunder. The rebels froze. The Empress raised her hand and her guards quickly surrounded the attackers. Within seconds, the hall was under control. The Empress looked at her daughter, then at Nathan, bleeding, burned, but still standing in front of Eris, protecting her with his body. For a long moment, she said nothing. Then softly she spoke. "He protected you again," Eris nodded. "Because he believes in honor." The Empress walked slowly toward them. Her eyes, once cold, now carried something deeper, something she hadn't shown in years. She turned to the rebels. "Take them away. All of them." When the hall finally cleared, Nathan collapsed. Eris knelt beside him, holding his hand. "Don't close your eyes," she whispered. He tried to smile. "You're safe now." The Empress knelt too, surprising everyone present. She studied him closely. "You risked your life for my daughter even after she caused you danger." Nathan's voice was weak but firm. "Because she's worth it." The Empress looked at Eris, then at Nathan again. For the first time in her long reign, she felt something she couldn't explain. Respect for a human. Days later, Nathan woke up in a medical chamber. His wounds were treated, his body weak but alive. Eris sat beside him, asleep in her chair. When she woke, her smile filled the room. "The Empress spared the rebels," she said. She said mercy was a human idea worth learning. Nathan looked at her in disbelief. She said that? Yes, Eris said softly. And she ordered something new, a treaty between our worlds. A true alliance of equals. Nathan felt his heart lighten. For the first time, peace might truly mean something. Weeks passed, and the alliance ceremony was held in the same hall where the chaos began. Representatives from both species gathered. The Empress spoke first, her tone solemn and proud. For too long we saw humanity as wild, but perhaps it is wildness that reminds us of what we have forgotten: courage, heart, and loyalty. Today we join not as rulers and servants, but as allies. The crowd erupted in applause. Eris stood beside her mother, radiant in silver and white. Nathan, still recovering, stood among the guards in the background, trying not to draw attention. After the ceremony, Eris found him near the courtyard. "You're not leaving without saying goodbye, are you?" she asked. He smiled faintly. "I thought it might be easier that way." She shook her head. "You're impossible." They walked through the garden together, the stars reflected in the crystal walls. Eris stopped near a glowing tree and looked up at him. "Do you remember what I said that day?" she asked. He nodded slowly. "Every word." "I still mean it," she said softly. "Even if no law allows it. Even if the universe doesn't understand." Nathan didn't answer at first. Then he said, "Maybe one day they will." A gentle silence settled between them. Far above, ships from both species flew side by side for the first time in history. Later that night, when the lights of the city faded and only the stars remained, Nathan sat on his balcony looking at the horizon. His body still hurt, but his heart was calm. He knew the road ahead would not be easy. Peace never was. But he also knew that what they had begun, the courage of one alien woman and one human soldier, had changed the fate of two worlds. In the quiet palace garden, Eris stood by the glowing tree, whispering a simple vow to the stars. "Whatever happens, I will never forget the human who taught me how to be brave." And across the vast galaxy, countless beings heard their story and remembered it. Some called it a scandal, others a miracle, but most called it a beginning.